Hi, I'm Joe. Welcome back. This is the Ultimate Love Letter. Thank you for joining the conversation. Freedom that God wants you to live, but we're going to have to go to God to get it. It occurred to me today that I haven't necessarily done a convo inspired by Black History Month. And I immediately said, okay, I got to change that. And so freedom is the message that I heard God say we ought to be speaking about. And specifically, I was led to the story of Harriet Tubman and the profound freedom that God put in her heart, the bravery, the courage that it took to follow the vision that God had been laying on her heart that would ultimately change the trajectory of history. So we're going to get into it. Because, we spoke in the last convos about the miracles that God has done through the beginning of time, the miracles that God has done in the past are the same miracles that God still does today if we allow Him, when we allow Him. And so, when I'm thinking about Harriet Tubman, I can't even begin to imagine what it was like to live in a time of slavery, of massive suppression. I can't even imagine when I think about my life in modern times and the fear that overcomes me just, living in a country where I am free and still moving from a place of fear sometimes, right? Because I say sometimes because I move with God. And so God just has encouraged me that when I move with Him, there's a security net, which is Him underneath my life. And so thinking about living in times of slavery and having the visions that Harriet had, and then acting on those visions. Like I am just moved to the core of me on the amount of courage, the bravery, the faith, the belief in the Most High to be able to act on it as a time like the times during slavery. Oh my gosh, she was different. And I just learned today that I was today years old when I learned that her nickname was Moses. Wow, how fitting. Because if we are familiar with the story of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, we understand that she led not only her and her family and friends to freedom, but also many, many other slaves. And I know it was so fitting, and I know it was only God that said we need to get into the freedom that I placed on the hearts of the Israelites when they were leaving Egypt and how Moses led them out. The freedom that I placed on Harriet Tubman's heart to free herself and other slaves is the same freedom that He wants to give us today. And I know we're living in modern times and we may be thinking that we're free, but let's dissect it for a moment. Let's look at our life. Where perhaps are we not truly free? And that can look like many things. Are we not free in our spiritual walk? We're doubting God. We're doubting his visions. We're doubting his word over our life. Are we not free in our life? Are we not going where God is asking us to go? Are we not doing the things God is saying we need to be doing that will actually set us free? Are we living paralyzed by fear to make moves on the creative acts, the creative visions, the dreams that we have? Are we paralyzed by fear because of the administration that has taken over in the US? And I have to get into this just a moment here, but I was with my beautiful dad today and he was, you know, talking about the administration and how we're living in scary times, and I get it. But what I was explaining to my father is, I really don't care who runs the country because I serve a God who is the ruler of it all. So I know on the surface, times may be scary, but I know God is leading me to do and fight and speak about love and fight for things that keep us from love. And I know that as God guides me, then that's the work that I'm ought to be doing. But I also know my God has the last say. And so I'm not going to put all my faith in any president, any governor, any mayor, any politician. My faith is in God alone. So whatever is happening in the country, whoever was elected, it makes me of no concern. Yes, I know who I voted for, and this may not have been the person that I wanted to see win the election, but I know no matter what happens, I serve a powerful God. I know no matter what happens, God has the last say. And so I am free to live my life abundantly. I know and I expect the miracles and the promises that God has me. So really, it doesn't matter to me who's running the country. I am free in my mind. I am free in God's will. I live my life according to God, and God has told me, as I keep my eyes on him, then I live in freedom. So this is where we need to get into it. Where are we possibly not living free? Is it in our mind? Is it perhaps we're not living free in our relationships? Perhaps we're not living free in speaking our truth. Perhaps we're not living free. We're afraid to move about in the world. We are scared because the U.S. tells us not to go to Mexico or the Bahamas and Russia. And so we're living paralyzed in our own country because someone else is telling us, dictating how we should be living. If you are swayed by the voice of anyone else other than your soul, which is God living in you, I will tell you, you are not free enough. When you live from a place of spirit, when you are living aligned with your soul, which is of God, God's very promises, God's very desire is that you live a life of freedom. He doesn't want to stop you. I remember many years ago when I was, going to a non-denominational church, and I was a good pillar of this Christian church that really teached a lot out of the Old Testament. And I was married at the time. And I remember my friends, my work friends rather, on the sidelines were saying, Joe, like I really, you're fun and I want to hang, but I don't know, that Christian life, it just doesn't seem like it's fun. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of freedom. And I get it. I get what they're saying. It seems like there's restrictions. It seems like there's a lot of rules. But the truth is, when we are following God, when we are going where God says go, when we are being led by the Spirit, it is absolute and total freedom. Everything frees up. The fear of your mind freezes up, or releases rather, because you trust God. And God says, I will protect you. I will tuck you under my wings. That it is me that has the last say over your life. I will guide you. I will keep you. I will care for you. I will protect you. So then now you release the fear of whatever will happen in life because you're keeping your eyes on God. Bingo, freedom. Freedom to move about life without really much care in the world because you know there's a safety net underneath you, which is the hands of God. My life has never been freer than when I decided to follow God wholeheartedly. And I will say, even though I've been learning, even back then, let's go a little further. Back then, decades ago, when I found myself in that Christian non-denominational church, I was really going through the emotions. I was going to church, I was tithing, I was being a pillar in my community, but really my heart was just barely softening. I said I trusted God, I wanted to trust God, but I can't say that I wholeheartedly trust God at that time. But I will tell you, those seeds were already planted in me because the seeds of my desire to know God back then burst forward today. They began to burst forward about several years after that Christian walk. It came at a time when I left, that church, and I left that state and I moved back home to where I'm at now, and where I'm from is Los Angeles. And then those seeds that I had sown back then began to really take root and begin to bear fruit. And it strengthened my walk, 10 times more than when it was when I found myself in church, 3 and 4 times a week. Now I know what it means to have an intimate relationship with God, to hear God. When I have a question, I go to God for the answer. Yeah, I may speak to family and friends, just to get their point of view, but I know at the end of the day, I'm going to hear what you guys have to say, but I'm going to God for the resolution. So once I began to follow God like that wholeheartedly, His desire became to set me free. And what that meant was set me free in every area of my life. Set me free from my mundane 9 to 5. God Himself is the one that told me to quit my job. And if you've been following the Ultimate Love Letter, I've spoken about this. God Himself in 2020, at the end of 2020, told me, how long will you allow others to dictate whether you work or not? God was essentially telling me, quit my job. He was saying it for months in my ear. I went into January 2020, in a nervous breakdown because I had been hearing God say, quit, quit, quit. Not those words. They were much more poetic. But basically, He was telling me, you got to let this go. You're destined for more. You're destined for greater. And I didn't understand it. I know that I feel like I'm destined for greater, but God, how? How am I supposed to quit? I don't have money saved in the bank. I am not married. I live at home alone. I am the only breadwinner. How am I supposed to quit? Bam, 2020 hit. March 2020, and now I'm laid off. Now I'm forced to quit. And in the middle of that chaos and me losing my job and finding myself unemployed for the first time, God provided massively during that time. He gave me a second chance. He gave me my freedom. I had never felt more free. I had never felt more playtime than that time. And yes, I went back to work a couple times, during 2020 rather. And at the end of the year, that's when I heard God say, how long will you allow others to dictate whether you work or not. You've got to let it go completely. Like, I have something for you. I have playtime for you. I have freedom for you. And I know on the surface, even though it looks terrifying, like, how am I going to meet these needs? How am I going to pay these bills? How am I going to survive? God says, if you hear my voice and I am telling you what to do, if I am leading you out on a limb, that is the safest place for you to be. And so there it was. God was leading me out on a limb. And I know it looked like I had no safety net underneath, but I knew God would never lead me into a place of despair, into a place where I am harmed. He was leading me to freedom. And the only way I could see it and realize it was I needed to jump into that faith. And so I pulled the trigger and I jumped. I quit my job, no savings, no security net, just the word of God, just because God told me to. And he caught me instantly. Where I thought there would be no way, I ended up starting a business really quick, really messy, out the gate, end up making double, literally double my first year in business than what I was making working a 9 to 5. And I did so essentially barely working. I'm laying by the pool and I'm earning a huge living. I'm talking to my girlfriends, just preaching the gospel, and I'm earning all this money. And I remember, I'll never forget, I was sitting on the couch and the money was already coming in. And I remember God saying, "What are you waiting for?" Literally, this is what I heard. What are you waiting for? And I knew exactly what he meant. You know, I have had travel, it's in my DNA. I started traveling solo since I was 18. By myself, solo. That's what solo means. Since I was 18. Like, I want to see the world. I know that was just another gift that God planted in me. It's something he wanted me to do, to see the world, and I had it. And when I was working, working in hotels, you only get about 2 weeks vacation a year. And so, every year I would take like a little 1 week or 2 week vacation and I would go abroad and yay, I took a week off and I went to Europe and now I'm back and get back to the grind. Next year I'll take another week. I thought this was just amazing. But God said, no more. No, way more. So as I was sitting on the couch and God said, well, what are you waiting for? I knew he meant, why are you still here? What are you doing on the couch? You know you want to go abroad. You know you have places to be. Get going. And when I heard that, I thought, okay, God, okay, so I can go. Okay. I'll go to like Thailand and I'll just go, for like a week or two, nothing too crazy. Because again, that was my mentality just coming out of working, for the last 25, 30 years in hotels where you're only allowed, 2 weeks a year. It took a process to undo that imprinting. So I'm thinking, okay, God, I'll just quickly go to Thailand, real quick, little cheap place, and I'll be right back in like a week or so. God was like, no bigger. No bigger. To my shock, surprise, God led me to the Maldives. Now, if you don't know anything about the Maldives, I'll just say it's no Thailand. Thailand is fascinating and wonderful. Maldives is deeply spiritual and the most beautiful place, in my opinion, in the world. And God said, not only will you go to the Maldives, you will go first class all the way. You will get a first class seat. You will get a bungalow over the water. Yes, I'm talking about the whole experience of the Maldives. If you go to the Maldives, you're blessed to even go there. But if you are exceptionally blessed to stay in a bungalow over the water, I'll just say, yes, that's what God did. Only God can do that. Only God could have done that in my life because I could never. But I heard God say, bungalow over the water, first class all the way, best resort, furthest away from the mainland. And I'm going to show you something. And I remember I started looking at, the prices and the itinerary, and I was like, God, okay, God, like, am I to spend all this money? And God was like, it wasn't even a thought. I've led you. You were to go. You were to book it this way. And so I did. I booked the overwater bungalow, jacuzzi out on the patio, ladders that take you into the sea off of your bungalow. It was incredible. It was things that I've only seen in dreams and in magazines, and where only celebrities visit. And here, little old me, God is leading me here. And so when I went to book the flight, I heard God again, book that first class flight. And I'm thinking, God, I was teetering there on my faith, God, okay, how about this? I was compromising with God. Really, I'll just call it what it was. It was ye of little faith. I heard God say first class ticket. I told God I will compromise, and I will get, it was really a compromise. I said, I will get a upgraded ticket in economy right behind like business class so that I can get a whiff of business class. That was my compromise. I just sold myself short. That was one of the last flights I ever took overseas in economy, because I realized on that flight, you know what? The whole time there and the whole way back, I sat right behind business class, and I thought, those are my people up there. I am no longer an economy girl when it comes to long haul travel. If I got to be in the air 15 hours, I need to be able to lay down. I need to be able to stretch out. And that just resonated. And that's what God was telling me. He was telling me, go first class all the way. But when I think about it, what was God really giving me? He was giving me my freedom. He was giving me what I was worth. He was saying essentially, you are my daughter. I live in you. You are worthy of the best experiences. And I am commanding you to take them. Now, I halfway listened, but I began to trust even a little bit more, because once I got in the air and I got going, I saw, God, you were right. I should have been up there. I learned a valuable lesson. When we were in economy, struggling to find our seats, all cramped up, still on the runway, I looked in business class and they were all comfortable, cozy under a blanket, already ordering what they were going to have as soon as they took off. They had champagne flowing while we were still getting our luggage in the overbins. The contrast of who I was the majority of my life and who I was now, because God says this is who I am, was just complete difference. And God was right. I needed to be up there. I was worthy of that. I listened to him after that. But what God was doing essentially is he was giving me my freedom. He was saying, you came to me. You are giving me your life. You are saying, I am in the lead. So now this is how I reward you in return. I reward you with freedom. I reward you with expansiveness. I reward you with peace. I reward you with experiences that you never even had the capacity to dream up for yourself. He puts the most incredible experiences, the most incredible playtime will become your life only when you go to God to get it. So for those that may be questioning, what is it like to live a spiritual life? And you may be thinking that serving God, you're limited in your experience. No, no, no. You're limited if you're not serving God. There's only so far you can go on your own as a human. There's only so far. You want to go all the way? You want to live completely free? You want to live in vastness. You want to be expanded. You want the most glorious experiences that will always be fresh. They will always be new. They will always be new paths and not worn out roads that you have taken year over year. Then you got to go to God to get that type of life. And I am living proof. I have lived my first half of life doing it my way, doing it Joe's way, working a 9 to 5, working a 9 to 5, striving at somebody else's hotel, grinding and climbing the corporate ladder. And my reward was 14 days of vacation at the end of the year. And then when I gave it all up and I gave it to God, I made more money. Vacation was every 60 days, literally. Like that first year, oh my God, I traveled so much, I was exhausted. Every quarter, God took me away. The first year out, like he took me to Maldives. Then he took me to Colombia. Then he took me to Brazil. Then I ended like in Thailand, in Japan, and it just flowed. I did all that in a year. In a year, I was exhausted. I'm like, whoa, God, I wanted to travel. I would have never thought I would be traveling to, like 8 countries in a year. I would be lucky to visit one country a year. And now I'm like, it's been a year and I've been to like 8, 9 countries. How? I'll tell you how. God and God's freedom. God doesn't want you cooped up in a cubicle. Your limiting beliefs, your fear to follow the unknown, to follow that voice within is what's keeping you trapped in like a cage, a jail cell. When you follow that voice, he leads you to your freedom. He leads you to the places that you haven't even yet thought about visiting. It's the ultimate freedom. It's the only way God operates. He doesn't want to restrict us. He certainly doesn't want to limit us. He wants to expand us. He wants you to live a life of play and a life of reverence and a life of worth and abundance and wealth and health and vibrancy and wonder. You're going to have to go to him though for it. I don't know about you, but no. I won't leave it up to me. Work another 9 to 5 and do things my way. And maybe if I'm lucky, I can travel once a year, or I can do things God's way, and God speeds up the process and he takes me all around the world. He does it. He does it. He pays for it. He funds it. He makes it so. It's the ultimate freedom. So I want to ask you, where are you living free and where are you still not free yet? Give it to God. Go to God. Step out in faith, because it's gonna have to take you stepping out in faith for him to show you what he has for you. Thank you so much for joining this combo to freedom. Here's to freedom. Here's to true freedom. I want to thank you. If this resonated, please consider sharing it, liking, subscribing. Thank you for your 5-star reviews. Your reviews make our show, your show, more recognizable. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you to those who have visited our shop, worldtreasure.shop. This is a limited and exclusive creative collection that I have hand selected from a few pieces from around the world, and I've added them to an online shop for you to enjoy. I own one of every item that you see displayed. So once they're gone, they're gone. And we are offering free shipping anywhere in the US. So thank you so much for taking part of that. Also, those who continue to support our sponsors of 4Ocean. 4Ocean, every purchase on 4Ocean site removes at minimum 5 pounds of debris from our oceans, our rivers, and our coastline. So thank you so much from me to you for doing your part there. And as a thank you, if you click the link in our show notes, you get 10% off every item on 4Oceans site. Thank you so much for being here. It's time to go live free. Until next time, love yourself and love others. We'll chat again soon. Bye for now.